Welcome to Druva's LinkedIn Live series in Cloud We Trust. I'm technology correspondent Lisa Martin. We're glad that you're with us. Today's topic is when you don't back up Microsoft 365, and you can hear that dun 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 right behind it. Two guests here to talk with you about that today. From Druva, Vanessa Tobes is here. It's Microsoft 365 Solutions Architect. Hey, Vanessa.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here. And from OHEL, Druva's customer, Erin Matatob is here, IT Infrastructure Manager, all the way from New York. Erin, it's great to have you on the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we're going to talk about three things with respect to when you don't back up Microsoft 365. And the first one is trust. You know, you can't talk about data without talking about trust. They are inextricably linked. Then we're going to talk about some examples. Erin's got an example of an issue that they had, how they recovered from that. Vanessa's going to share some examples as well of some common mistakes that can be made with respect to data in Microsoft 365, where that data becomes irrecoverable. And then the third thing that we're going to leave you with is recommendations. They're going to tell you what not to do, then they're going to tell you what to do. So as always, we'd love to have your participation in the show. Send us a question or a comment and we will address it during the show. All right, Erin, let's go ahead and start with you. Tell our friends and family here about OHEL. What is it that you guys do?
So OHEL is a nonprofit organization. It's an agency that helps transform lives for people struggling with mental health. We provide programming for after-school care for kids with development disabilities and residential housing for adults with development disabilities as well. We also help seniors navigate challenges of aging.
Can imagine that is an absolutely essential business during these times, and we're glad that you're here, Erin. And Vanessa, tell me a little bit about your role at Druva as a Microsoft 365 Solutions Architect.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working with Microsoft technologies since the on-premises versions of SharePoint and their BI, and very specifically all the way through all the different versions and into the cloud. So for Druva, I'm a subject matter expert. So ultimately, I work across a lot of the departments to help guide and answer questions and provide some insight as well about 365 and the customers and how they use it.
Terrific. And you're lucky today, guys, because you get to hear all that insight from Vanessa and Erin in the next 15 or 20 minutes. So Vanessa, let's start with topic one, and that's trust. As I mentioned, you can't talk about data without talking about trust. And for a long time, businesses in every industry have put their trust in Microsoft to protect the data, but things are changing. What are you seeing?
Well, back in the, or not even back, but behind the firewall, right, on a corporate intranet or a corporate network, you find that organizations back up their content. They back up their VMs. They back up their databases. They back up their file servers. So it was never really a question about to back up or not to back up. But as companies and organizations move to the cloud, and I think it goes even well beyond Microsoft technologies as well, but I found that companies just put their trust in Microsoft, right? And they kind of accepted this messaging that was out there. You can use the recycle bin. The platform is stable. There are a number of this collective message where they just chose not to, and that was very, it's very baffling, to be honest, from an information management perspective. So.
I've talked to a lot of Druva customers, and there is that shared responsibility model that Druva talks about and educates its customers on, but there is that sort of fail-safe of it's in the cloud. And obviously we know that it's Microsoft responsibility for the platform, but Mr. and Miss Customer, you're responsible for the data. So as in the last year, Vanessa, with the massive pivots, everybody pivoted millions of times and still is, but the work from home shift was almost overnight, as we're seeing the increase in digital business transformation and adoption of cloud and SaaS. So with dependence on tools like Microsoft 365 for collaboration, communication, private data, what now can companies do to ensure that this business critical information is available and restorable should anything happen?
Yeah, you brought up a number of really good points, right? A company doesn't have to step too far away. They can look at their end user license agreement for the Microsoft Cloud, both the cloud responsibility model, but also very specifically calling out that a customer is responsible for their data, and even more so, they're responsible to back up their own content. So with this rise, right, most companies take years to adopt a lot of Microsoft technologies, but very specifically for the cloud, it is a long, several years before a company might roll out both Teams and any one of the other apps within 365. So with this fast adoption of 365, or just because of the work from home, right, companies are kind of, I wouldn't say cutting corners, but they just had to get their users on these applications so they could continue working from home. So I think a lot of things were missed in that, or less prioritized.
And that's a good point that you bring up. And we've talked about this with Stephen Manley, Druva's CTO, about one of the things that's important for 2021 is getting back to the basics. Erin, let's go over to you now. Now, pre-pandemic, OHEL transitioned from Exchange on-prem to Microsoft 365. Talk to us a little bit about your cloud strategy and why you knew protecting this data falls on us.
So, I mean, Vanessa nailed it. Microsoft has been a big player in the industry for a long time, and everyone in the industry relies on Microsoft a lot. But after a while working in the business, you understand that Microsoft provides, they're one of those industries that does a lot, like a little, but in a lot of areas. But you need someone that could do a lot in a certain area. So one of the factors for an organization like us who deal with a lot of sensitive information, we needed to find a solution that could help us comply with HIPAA regulations. We needed an amazingly strong retention policy, and as well as security. So that's why our strategy was to find a solution that could provide all of those. Because when you start digging in, Microsoft has proposed many limitations.
All right, let's stick with you, Erin, going into our second topic, examples. You had a compelling event that really demonstrated why you needed a robust cloud-based data protection solution for Microsoft 365. Share with our audience what happened and how you fixed it.
You have to bring up such a sore memory. So
Sorry.
A few years ago, when we decided to align our strategies to a SaaS solution for our mail environment, we obviously went into Microsoft Office 365. And when we were just experimenting with that, we modified the licensing, and that caused the loss of emails. And when we reached out to Microsoft support to restore that, they told us that those emails went into limbo. I think they called it a ghost server at the time, and it was unrecoverable. That was a huge wake-up call that we cannot rely on Microsoft. So we need to rely on ourselves and take accountability, and look for a solution that could back everything up no matter what happens, whether it's user error or an outage. At least we have peace of mind.
And so being a Druva customer, and in case you didn't catch it, Erin and I had a chance to sit down and talk during Druva's user conference, DXP. We'll post a link here. But talk to us about what you were doing before. You had a competitor of Druva in, I think, protecting VMs. And when you decided to migrate to the cloud, you thought, that's not the right way to go. Talk to us a little bit more about that decision.
Right. So at the time we were using Veeam, and it was backing up all of our VMs and on-prem environment. And when we contacted them that we want to now back up our Office 365, at the time it wasn't available, but when it was available, it was a separate platform and it wasn't integrated into the same Veeam software. So I didn't accept that as the solution. I wanted to see if there was an all-in-one solution. And lo and behold, we found Druva that is an all-in-one, cloud-based dashboard, very friendly, granular, has everything we needed as far as security and retention policies. It was a no-brainer. It was the way to go, and it was cost-effective for us.
And now you have more time back to do your hobby, which clearly is watching hockey.
Oh, yes. Everybody has a virtual Zoom background. I decided to make it a reality background.
You don't need it. And that's a signed jersey too, right?
That's an autographed jersey from Henrik Lundqvist, the king himself. Yes.
The king himself. Excellent. Vanessa, I don't know where we go from here, but talk to us about some examples with SharePoint, because as Erin walked us through the challenges with Exchange, the term ghost server just doesn't sound like it would ever be a good thing. But these are data in SharePoint. I can't imagine right now in the pandemic collaborating without a tool like SharePoint. What are some of the common challenges that customers can make and render that data irrecoverable?
Yeah, absolutely. SharePoint has been around for so long, and not everything you can find right in the recycle bin or retention's not going to help it. But customers can look through their help desk ticketing systems and find a number of common things like you cannot restore the site permissions to what it was yesterday, or even maybe what it was this morning. You cannot restore columns. Now, SharePoint is the file foundation, right? The foundation of a team. So when you see the files in Teams, and they're making it so much easier for companies to create a column, to tag information. Right? That's part of an organization's information management process, is to tag information to make it easier for people to find it. And even to kick off workflows. So, but it also is very easy to mass update metadata in a library for your contracts library and change the status from red, yellow, green to, all green. Or companies can delete a column on accident when you have the buttons right next to each other. It happens. So the users with access in SharePoint are the ones that really do feel that pain. You have users that don't realize that the move function, right? If I select a folder and I click the move and I want to move it to a different location, that they didn't realize that there's 10,000 folders and 10,000 files, 400 folders in there. And they start to move that, right? 24 gigs doesn't move very fast. And the move function isn't the issue, but it's when people use it and they think that they're just moving a few things and they're migrating a large volume. And they open up a ticket. Hey, I did this and half of my stuff is here. And I think the other half of it's here. And there's no undo. So this messaging that's been going around about use the recycle bin, you can use retention, use version history, all of those things, they don't really play well into being able to recover information. Right. So those are just some of a few of those examples within SharePoint. I probably could go on for another half hour.
Well, you bring up a good point that a lot of it, and Erin, you know this too, the biggest challenge, the biggest threat from a security perspective, data loss, accidental or whatnot, is humans. It's just human nature. We do something, we think it's going to work, it doesn't. And then we expect, talk about trust, we trust the help desk that they're going to be able to restore it so that there's not a giant, spotlight on us if like so-and-so deleted data. And that's a big challenge. But that's one of the things that I think is also the hardest to protect against, because humans are we're creatures of habit. We know what we do. Changing systems is challenging, but that's also a reason why. And Erin, I'd like to get your perspective. I'm hearing from a lot of Druva customers who are using Druva for Microsoft 365, and then when the pandemic hit, started rolling out faster Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive. We have to make sure that everything in here is accessible. And should we be hit by ransomware, which is on the rise, we need to make sure that it is restorable. Erin, talk to us about your phased rollout of Microsoft 365, how you're giving users access and how you're protecting that with Druva.
So, my objective was to find a solution that could back up all the emails, and then all these other amazing factors and solutions came into play when you start comparing it with other products out there. Druva was not only able to back up the emails, but it also backs up SharePoint, which Vanessa just mentioned a lot of things that calms me down. Thank God I haven't had to have a situation where I needed to restore anything from SharePoint. But now that I know that I can easily, that's great. Teams, we're starting to use Teams a lot more now in the agency. So that's one of the things now, ever since COVID hit, where a lot of people are working home and we're using our Office 365 platform, which is great. It gives us a lot of things, not just emails, but like Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive. And so people are using it more and more now because it gives them the flexibility and of working from home and accessing everything. And it's great to know that Druva can back all of that up. And then on top of that, because we're aligning a lot of our strategy to SaaS solutions, we now can back up Salesforce too with Druva, which is an amazing thing. And restoring is so granular, and there's more options as opposed to Salesforce itself, which I think now not only has limitations, but I don't even know if it's available anymore, the built-in restore option from Salesforce. So it's just great that there's a product out there that could do so much. I mean, we hit the jackpot.
Oh, we like that. And so, Erin, take us into our final section, which is recommendations. We talked about some of the challenges that you had. Let's talk about what you recommend that folks that are in your situation looking at migrating from on-prem to the cloud and looking at third-party backup, if they've learned by now from this last 16 minutes not to put the trust in Microsoft. There is that shared responsibility model. What are, Erin, your top 3 recommendations for your peers?
Number one recommendation, number one thing I have to say is I don't recommend you assume that Microsoft can do everything. I strongly recommend you have a solution for a lot of areas in what you're putting on the cloud. Don't assume that everything is safe in the cloud. You need to make sure that you have your own backup solution. What I also recommend is look for a solution that has great support. Druva has great support. They respond quickly. And you need that when you're dealing with sensitive information. And something that you can restore quickly. There's less training. It's not complicated. It's easy for all the technicians to use. Those are my top 3.
And just one thing on Druva's support, we talk about that a lot with customers, which is really nice to hear. But I think when you and I were doing the interview for the case study, Erin, that we'll link to, you talked about Druva's support proactively reaching out to you to talk to you about long-term retention. Can you share with our audience about that?
That's my favorite part. Out of nowhere, I get a call that this is a pro health check review, and the account manager just did a remote session, looked at our dashboard, and made some recommendations where he's actually helping us save more money. He introduced something called long-term retention. So a lot of things that he's showing us how we can save money. I mean, what product does that, right? So this is amazing. So it already shows that it's a good relationship, and it's scheduled every few months. We get on and we review and we make sure we're on target and we meet all of our goals. So that's one of my favorite parts about Druva.
Yeah, excellent. And Vanessa, let's wrap things up with you. You shared some great insights. What do you recommend businesses do, especially as they're in this somewhat semi-permanence of work from home and an increasing dependence on SaaS and cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for companies, organizations that either have a formal or informal policies and procedures around security, right? Security and data retention. If you don't have a formal policy, you must back up and protect the information. It is part of a big picture, right? It's not just part of it, and let's use certain applications to help secure us, but we have to be able to help you recover your information under a number of different circumstances. Right? So for organizations with CSOs, right, that have a more secure, right, InfoSec, you want to include data recovery as part of that to be proactive so you can be reactive. Right?
Exactly. Well, I would say to all of you watching, follow Vanessa's advice. And second tagline, be like Erin. Erin and Vanessa, thank you so much for joining me on the program today. It was really educational.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
And we want to thank you for watching. We're going to be back with you in 2 weeks with a new topic. And on behalf of my guests, I'm Lisa Martin. Thanks for your time and stay safe.